7:02.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Lower Paxton Township Board of Supervisors, and we'll call the meeting to order. I would like to ask everyone to please rise, and Mr. Zumas will lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This is the time set aside for public comment. Public comment is meant for items that are not on the agenda. If you wish to comment on an item on the agenda, we will do that at the time that that agenda item is being discussed by the board. So does anybody here wish to speak to an item not on the agenda this evening?
This is all the handout stuff. We'll start here and go there.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Name and address.
Bill Payne.
Even though we know it.
Turn on your mic, Bill. Hit the green button.
Look at that.
Perfect.
Is that better?
Thank you,
All right.
Bill.
I'm Bill Payne from Inglestown Fire Company. On behalf of Inglestown Fire Company, I'd like to just thank your support. We received a gaming grant of $350,000. So we are proceeding with the air unit replacement. But again, I'd just like to thank you folks for supporting us and helping us get that, because it's a huge savings for our fire company and the township. So thank you very much.
Well deserved.
You're most
Thank
welcome.
you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for all you're doing. We were very, very pleased to see that that grant was awarded. That was a big one.
It's a lot of containers of soup.
Although we want to continue buying the soup. Anybody else wish to make public comment on an item not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we have a presentation now, and we have a financial contribution to the Lower Paxton Township Police Department, to our volunteer fire companies, and to South Central EMS. And Robert Ketchum from the Veterans of Foreign Wars, if you would come up to the podium, please, along with those individuals who will be receiving the contributions. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. Yeah, we started this like last year, I believe, was our first time.
Yeah.
And I have here my quartermaster, Joe Stout, and my sturgeon, Donna Calder. Surgeon. Or did I say sturgeon? Oh, sorry.
Big
Big
fish.
fish, you're a big
She's
fish.
a big fish.
Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, so we started this last year, and we decided to continue it this year. We feel that the members of the volunteer fire company, the EMS, and the police department all do a fantastic job for our township, and that we felt that we need to contribute what we can to hopefully help with their expenses that they have coming down the road. So we have a check here for each of the the Lower Paxton Police Department, Township Police Department. I'd like to give you this check for $500, and hopefully it can be beneficial to you.
You guys want to both face her for pictures?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. About Colonial Park Fire Company. Hey, here you go. Thank you. Bye. Oh. South Center EMS. Obviously, this isn't in order. Oh, you want to? Thank you. Inglestown Fire Company. Thank you. Thank you. And last but not least, Paxtonia Fire Company.
She's going to yell at me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, she will.
Phil's picture.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
We do appreciate everything these people do, and we are honored to be able to do this for them.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay.
What all you do for our township as well.
Well, thank you to the VFW for all the service you've already rendered to our nation, but what you're continuing to do. We appreciate that. And I think it's worth noting, I saw a Facebook post this morning of a new fire truck with all sorts of sirens and whistles blowing, arriving at the Paxtonia Fire Department. So the first of 3 fire department. When are the other 2 are coming in the fall, right? Is that late summer, early fall? Well, that's always exciting. Well, yeah. Well, thank you again to all involved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we're going to proceed to an update on Heroes Grove, and we are prepared to move into phase 2 of Heroes Grove, and Christine Hunter is here with an update for us. Christine, good to see you again.
Oh, okay.
So yes, we're very excited. We're at the point in phase 2 to put the project out to bid. So phase 2 involves putting a roof over the stage, adding some stage lighting, turning the wall that is there at the electrical box into a storage building, equipment building, and some steps down from the upper level down to the stage for better access, and then an access drive from the gravel road up to the stage. So some good improvements that'll help with the usability of the facility. So the bids will be advertised this week in the Sun. It'll actually be on Thursday. So I just updated my schedule with that. Bids will be due April 16th, and our hope is to provide a notice to proceed after the June 16th supervisors meeting. That'll give time to review the bids and then have them approved by your board. And then hopefully start construction after the summer. Most of the summer activities are over, after the concerts are over. And then hopefully a end date by next February. The roof will be a little bit of a lead time because of the engineering for that. It'll be a prefab by kind of a pavilion company. So they'll actually do the engineer drawings and then installation of that.
Very good.
Okay, good.
So
Any questions about phase 2?
we appreciate your support, and I'll be back then in a couple months to let you know how the bids go. Are there any questions that I could answer?
Thank you for the concise schedule. That makes it very easy for us to follow and for what
Right.
you're planning to do and how you plan to implement it. So thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
It's exciting after the many, many years that it's taken to get to this
Absolutely.
point. So thank you, Christine. Okay, we need the presentation and to take action on a roadway asset management proposal, this from HRG. And Mr. Hines, he's over at the podium.
Walk right over there.
Jump right in. Good evening, everybody. Jason Hines with HRG. Before you tonight is a proposal for an enhancement to your roadway asset management program. Before I get into that, I'd like to just give a brief presentation on roadbotics, which is the technology for which the proposal was based. First and foremost, Roadbotics is a Pittsburgh-based company that was established in 2016 who developed a unique tool for use in roadway asset management planning. HRG is actually a enterprise business partner with Roadbotics as of late last year. So that means that we can now offer that service to the communities that we work with throughout Pennsylvania. The process, this slide actually does a good job as an executive summary to outline the entire process of the tool that Robotics developed. The process involves using a smartphone to take a video scan of all the roads within the given scan area. So the smartphone gets mounted to a vehicle along the windshield, and then you drive all the streets that you're looking to scan. During that process, the scan video is chopped up into about 10-foot long segments that artificial intelligence within the software then analyzes and assesses the condition of the road and assigns a rating on a 1 to 5 scale based on the condition of the road. After that, the data is processed by Robotics. Robotics performs a quality check of the data. They use it to develop both point data and segment data maps, which we'll get into in a little bit. And then HRG uses those maps to collaborate with Township staff in developing roadway treatment plans and cost estimates to develop those roadway management plans. So if you want to go to the next slide there, Shelley. So to Robotics' credit, they recognize some shortfalls with the current way that a lot of municipalities are managing their roadway infrastructure. The two main ways that most places employ are either just visual inspection or vehicular scans. The issues with those are, especially with the visual inspections, they're highly subjective. You can have 10 different people go out and analyze the roadways, and you're going to get 10 different perspectives. It's very time consuming. You can imagine how much time is involved in analyzing each one of those roads on an individual basis, taking notes, then going back, compiling those notes. It can be dangerous if you have your field personnel out in the middle of these roads with limited traffic control. The sensor van option has particularly historically been expensive. Robotics offers a solution that typically is a third to a quarter of the cost of the more traditional type of vehicular scans. Because of that cost, the data is normally very infrequently obtained and refreshed, which is a very important piece of making sure that you have a good, up-to-date plan. It's also very labor-intensive. It takes bodies to go and assess the roads, to develop these plans, whereas the robotic scan is doing things in real time immediately as soon as it collects the data.
Okay,
You go ahead and go to the next slide, Shelley.
that's how I have to do it from now on.
So some of the solutions to those challenges that robotics offers is it gives you an objective perspective. So instead of having those 10 different perspectives from the people that are doing the assessments on the road, you get one objective perspective. It saves on time because, as I mentioned, as the phone is scanning the roads, it's automatically inventorying that data. You don't have to go back and compile your notes and try to remember what you saw earlier in the day. It's probably the most affordable option in terms of scanning the roadways that is available on the market today. It's convenient in that all it takes is a smartphone, just a regular passenger-sized vehicle. There's no special equipment outside of that's needed. Everything is completely automated. The phone collects the data. Robotics, through their algorithms and their code, process the data, and then the maps are generated. The point data and the segment data are the forms in which the deliverables are produced. So I mentioned before that when you take the video, it's automatically chopped up into those 10-foot long segments. Those 10-foot long data points is what's being referred to as the point data. So you can see that on a map, and we have an example of the map in the next slide here that shows on a scale of 1 to 5, and they're color-coded there, the condition assessments of each one of those individual 10-foot pieces along the reach of the road that's scanned. So from this point data, it then generates the segment data, which can go from roadway intersection to roadway intersection, and essentially compile those point data pieces into a segment that can be used to assess an entire road or a neighborhood. So this is a slide that kind of summarizes that data collection process. I mentioned before that the data is collected by the smartphone and the scan with the passenger vehicle. Originally, the software that robotics used was developed with millions of photos of road distress that are currently found, that are most usually found on the types of roads that the phone scans. The artificial intelligence in the program would then take the photos of that point data, the scans, and compare it to that database. And that's how it would assign a rating to those points and to the various segments. That means that it's essentially learning the more data that the phone processes and that robotics processes, that gets added to the inventory. So it's kind of a learning process for the artificial intelligence. After the data is collected and the maps are developed, they're provided to the township and to HRG to assess. This is just an example of the raw data and how the program interprets it. So you can see the top photo there is what the phone would see in the current time as the scan's taking place. It would go and it would interpret that data in kind of the bottom picture there. It would take into account all those potholes, and then it would assign, in this instance, a level 5 to that segment of the road. So the rating curve, level 1 being the roadway in the best condition, level 5 being the roadway in the worst condition, and 2 through 4 kind of fill in the gaps in between. So why is this product beneficial? I mentioned before it provides an objective and very efficient set of data that you can then use to take action on and decide what kind of roadway maintenance activities you want to pursue. The cost effectiveness is a big selling point, especially when compared to the previous types of scanning that were available. And really the last point there is at the township level, there's a lot of assets that you have to manage, and there's budgetary constraints tied to just about all of those. This makes the way of managing your roadways more efficient. It gives you a better, faster, more efficient way to keep the data and to keep it up to date. You can see here, this is the map of the township. There's 266 centerline miles of public township roadways. The red lines that you see on the page are the state highways that would not be included in the scan. Just to give you kind of an example of how large of a scale of a roadway network you guys have, 266 centerline miles, it would take almost 9 hours if you were just continuously driving at 30 miles an hour through the township to navigate all those roads. Now that's not factoring in stopping time, turning time. That's just in an ideal scenario. If you had a straight shot, 266 miles, take you 9 hours to navigate all those roads. So why was the technology developed? Roadbotics has a lot of testimonials on their website. There's a few on the next few slides that I think are particularly relevant to what we do at the municipal level. This comes right from the fleet manager for Cranberry Township, who was a client of Roadbotics. These are also some more testimonials that address a lot of the common situations that the municipalities face, mostly with receiving calls from residents about complaints within the roadways. With Roadbotics, you can pull up the map in real time. You can see the photos. You can let them know exactly what the plans are for that road going forward based on the condition assessment. It gives you, actually go back one, sorry. It gives you a communication piece that allows you to better demonstrate why the roads that we're addressing at the current time are being the priorities opposed to other neighborhoods. And it also allows you to be more proactive in your managing of the asset opposed to being reactive. So by seeing the big picture, the entire township assessment of the roads, you can allocate your resources towards maybe some of the worst roads, maybe from preventing some of the roads that are on their way to being the worst roads to getting to that point. And the final piece of that plan is to take it into consideration when you're doing your capital improvement planning. It is not your entire roadway management plan. That takes some coordination with the other projects that are going on in the township in terms of your sanitary sewers, your stormwater, any other utility work. The roadway plans need to be coordinated closely with those entities. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that in the past. I think this would just make that effort a little bit more efficient.
Okay. Are you about through the slides here?
That's the last one.
Okay, very good. Any
Open it up to
questions, board members?
Jason, in particular, your final comments dealt with this is not a complete plan because of other interventions.
Correct.
As a result of that, how do you know? It's going to be a twofold question. Like the question is, how do you know what to do versus that which is on the plans because of sewer and Verizon and Comcast and all of those things? And the second part of that is, how does that interface and to what extent is Mr. Klein involved in the entire process?
Yeah, so it kind of lets you develop your priority list, and then you go down that priority list and share the information with the utilities, with the authority who are planning these projects. And you take that into consideration, the projects that they have planned over the next several years when you're trying to put together your project plan for the short and for the long term. In terms of how it affects what Public Works does, I think that it mitigates some of the load that's on them to on an annual basis assess the roads and come up with a kind of their own internal priority list. I think that's been done mostly with visual inspections and by complaints that we've heard from residents. So the scan, having the data and the mapping, kind of lightens the burden there.
Okay, then I'll rephrase my question, which is the same thing. I'm trying to still get the information I'm looking for, and I haven't heard it yet. you're going to choose your roads, but what you don't know are the things that you've identified as extraneous variables that only Jeff would know. So that's why I'm asking the question. I don't want to duplicate work that if you're surveying certain roads because you think they're important, but you don't know what Jeff knows in terms of those are roads where they're going to be torn up in the next year and a half. So how do you coordinate that effort with Jeff, and to what extent is he involved, so we're not duplicating or doing work that's really not necessary?
Yeah, so I think the scan would encompass the entire township.
Because I heard you say that it wasn't doing the entire township.
Not the state roads.
Just not the state roads. Okay,
Entire
exclusive
township
state roads.
minus
Okay.
the state and private roads, yes.
Okay, and I still need the last part of that. To what extent is Jeff involved?
Jeff's involved in helping prioritize that list.
Okay.
And also retrieving the data from the authority on their projects and any stormwater projects that may be on the horizon.
Okay, so he will be interfacing with you as you prepare. Okay, good. That's the part I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Jason, is this a one-time evaluation, or is it updated periodically, or how's that work?
The data is best if you update it on like a 3 to 5 year type of basis. That's normally about the time that it takes for you to be able to make noticeable adjustments.
But
in
this
that condition
contract is
assessment.
just for one.
It's just for one scan. Yep, the initial scan.
And Jason, I had a question. Is there any other municipality in Dauphin County that has signed on to do this?
Hummelstown Borough is the only other one that has had the scan done. There are about 6 to 8 other municipalities, several of them in Dauphin County, that are considering doing this year.
So this is diagnostic, and I think I read where you offer to help with planning going forward, but
We
we're
do.
not, that's not part of the package we're doing. We're just diagnostics.
Correct.
Getting an evaluation. And it's about $24,000, I think. And you guys will actually be the ones to go out and drive.
Yes.
And now so that will be covered by this fee, not in addition. That won't be in addition.
Correct.
Our rates that we have for you normally, because we keep you guys pretty busy. But you feel you have enough staff, enough time to set aside, I think this said 120 days,
120 days.
120 What?
120 days.
for the
from-
whole thing,
Yes.
So
I thought he said
you won't be stretched too
It
thin.
says, the contract says with 120 days.
Yeah, so, okay.
No, that should be perfectly within reason. And really the reason that it's extended out that long is because there are particular time constraints on the scan. Those are also listed on the proposal. The roadways must be completely dry, free of rain and
Right.
snow.
Yeah, as long as, you obviously you've thought this through, but just because, like I said, we use you guys so much.
There is a wiggle sentence there at the
Yeah.
very end, which talks about weather conditions.
Now, you've been affiliated with them since 2016?
No, the company came into existence in 2016. Our partnership with them began last year.
So they're relatively new.
Yes.
Your partnership was relatively new. So you've never experienced them from beginning to end.
Hummelstown will be the first one, yes.
Okay. To where you see them actually do the mapping and then see how a municipality uses the mapping. This is all relatively new. So we're going to be one of the early ones as far as to see how it's actually used. The sensor vans,
Yes.
how much different are they? Are they the same thing? They're just kind of doing a visual on the roads.
They're doing a visual scan of the roads too. The major difference there is they pick up some additional information that the robotic scan currently doesn't have the capability to, such as like pavement markings. It can do a lot of those van scans can do inventories of your signs, of your guide rail.
But it's
things
not
of
like
that.
they're doing x-rays or anything like that other than superficial. They're
Superficial,
It's
correct.
all more or less visual.
Yes.
Okay.
Jason, I'm sure you've observed, or at least gathered data from what Cranberry has done, and they've been through the entire process and have
Yes.
implemented the recommendations made by this organization, correct?
Yes. In fact, Roadbotics, even though they're a relatively new company, they've actually gone worldwide. They've done work in 14 countries, across 34 states, 200 communities. So even though they are relatively young, they're experienced. We wouldn't have entered into this partnership with them if we didn't believe that they offered something that would
And
be
for us,
beneficial.
they're not making recommendations. This is just mapping. They're
Correct.
okay.
Yeah, and they don't make recommendations. They particularly just do the data gathering and processing. The recommendations would come from the municipality and the municipal engineers.
And I'm sorry, one more, Jason. You had mentioned earlier that this could be something that maybe you share with the utilities and all the people that we have to coordinate our road projects with. Is there an instance, do we know, have they ever taken this kind of information and used it to work with municipalities? Or do they do their own thing and just, at the best, let us know? But do you know of any times when they would take this and look at it and say, okay, well, we wanted to do an upgrade of our water lines there, but we can hold off to coordinate with the municipality? Is that?
Yeah, I'm not aware of an instance where they've particularly done that, but I don't see any reason why they couldn't. Traditionally, we've provided them with a list of roads that we're considering working on and paving in an upcoming year and asked them if they had any projects going on. The mapping that we'll receive from Roadbotics is in a format that's easily used with GIS software, with AutoCAD software. So I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to share the full scale of the data set with them.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah.
I just,
Oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
well, I appreciate the presentation, Jason. Good job. But before any action would be taken, I'd like to ask Mr. Klein if he has any questions or comments relative to what he just heard tonight.
The question I had, one of you asked, is about the future. How often are you going to have to do this? How much will that cost? The mapping and the rating, that's a good tool to have.
Yeah, so you can really do the scan as frequently as you like. Our recommendation is typically based on the size and the amount of roadways that you have. And I think based on the size of this municipality, it doesn't make sense to do it any more frequently than, like I said, the 3 to 5 year scans.
So my question was, the price goes on the amount of miles that you're scanning? How did you come up with the 24,000?
Yeah, so Roadbotics bases the price on a per mile basis, and just like anything else, there's some economy of scale built into that. I think if you do the math, it works out to be about $91 a mile for the proposal that we presented to you. Like I mentioned before, traditionally, you could expect that to be 3, sometimes 4 times that amount with the previous ways of performing these scans.
So the robotics will take care of everything, HRG will not be involved in anything?
No, HRG will be involved in the entire process. So we'll have oversight of everything that Roadbotics is doing. We'll be the ones that actually navigate the township roads and do the scan. Once the scan is complete, the data that's on the phone will go to Roadbotics in Pittsburgh. They'll process the data, develop the maps, and then those maps will come back to HRG and to the township.
So HRG actually has a van at their facility that they'll be using for
Could
this?
you talk into the microphone?
Just need a regular
Oh,
car.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, I thought there was a special van that they were going to use. So
No,
Okay,
no. It can be any
Okay.
passenger type of vehicle.
okay. Okay.
Okay. I think we've gone through all of our questions. Anybody in the public? Our one public? Okay, well, thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. With that, this was both a presentation and we are scheduled for action on this. Would the board like to take action? And if so, would anybody like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the action on the roadway asset management proposal from HRG in the amount of $24,000 to road robotics.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
As long as we can blame Jason in case anything goes wrong.
Always.
You will.
My motion is contingent upon Jason, and you include Jeff in everything.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded, and Jason will be held responsible. So, well, with that is, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now we need to have the first presentation of proposed ordinance 2020-03. This to amend Chapter 196, Vehicles and Traffic, to enact certain restrictions on truck, tractors, and trailers.
I need to see you.
Mr. Godshall and Nick, I see you're down here on the hook for this one as well. So are you going to lead off?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, ordinance 20-03 is in your packet for review for the first time this evening. As mentioned, this ordinance comes as a result of a lot of work that Mr. Garrett, Mr. Klein, I believe, and members of the police department as well have been doing over the past number of months relative to some concerns along Union Deposit Road, as well as some other roadways within the township, where we have identified particular vehicles parking within areas of that roadway, particularly within the public right-of-way, that is causing some concern. And so Mr. Garrett has put together the memo that is in your packet this evening. Basically what the ordinance does is to amend Chapter 196, removing the word residential from zoning district and making this ordinance reflect tractor trailers that are parked anywhere on public rights of way within the township. So Mr. Garrett, as you mentioned, is here this evening, and we would be happy to answer any questions or anything that the board may have.
Okay. Mr. Garrett, do you have anything to add?
Really, this isn't an isolated issue that the township deals with just at the intersection or at the parcel at New Side Road and Union Deposit Road. We've dealt with complaints off of Fenton Avenue, Penn Grant Drive, and a couple years ago, we had vehicles parking at the right-of-way associated with Fairmont and Lingelstown Road, which is in the residential district. So in reality, what's important about this ordinance is that the vehicles that you see parking along the right-of-way of Union Deposit Road and New Side were the vehicles that were essentially chased out of the residential district. Mm-hmm. Our hope is that, we have this area that's going to be posted now by PennDOT in an area that was found to be within their right-of-way, which the police department can ticket for trespass by vehicle. But with the way Union Deposit is situated, the vehicles that were parked along the right-of-way, the police department had no way of enforcing that issue. So with this ordinance, that gives us that ability to enforce that. And the hope is that with this, the vehicles won't find a new location to park that can't be addressed by the ordinance. Amending the ordinance in this way gives the police department the tools to enforce the vehicles parking anywhere within the township.
Good.
Nick, I just had a question. If they would go a little further in, there's kind of like a little bit of a circular. If they parked there, is that considered legal also?
That was within the memo. what was found was that that section is actually PennDOT right-of-way. So when the sewer authority was doing their construction work, they had a plan associated, and it showed that their right-of-way extended well beyond what used to be the fruit stand.
Right, okay,
So
that
with-
was my question.
Yep,
Okay.
with contacting PennDOT, they did say they will post this. This is not an urgent concern for them, but they're going to post each entrance of the gravel driveway as no trespassing. So if vehicles do park there, the police department will have the ability to ticket them.
Okay, because I had a lot of complaints too, and that's why I was curious. Okay.
And so these are a response to residents complaining, and I guess about what, just the aesthetics or the safety, or?
It's mostly the aesthetics. An argument could probably be made that there is potentially a site issue involved at the intersection of New Sign and Union Deposit Road, but the problem is that there was over 370 feet of frontage along
Right.
Union Deposit Road, so with the trailer trucks parked there, they're more than likely out of the site triangle, and it's also a signaled location. So if the police were to post it, the parking signs would have to have been justified.
Right.
And mostly for a site obstruction, they wouldn't have been able to meet that criteria.
Okay, and that's, aesthetics is important too. And for this particular location, the challenge was it's a business, commercial, so technically those, we don't prohibit them currently, just in residential.
Correct. That parcel was zoned business campus, and how the ordinance is currently written is that tractor trailer combinations are prohibited on parking on any residential street in a residential district.
Even though clearly it's not being used for that now. Now,
Correct.
So who do we think these are residents who own the trucks, and where will they go?
It's hard to say. I know I've spoke to the police department numerous times about the difficulty of enforcing these vehicles. You have drivers, but they drive for a company, so when they run the VIN number and the registration, it doesn't go back to, a Sam Smith. It goes to a company out of Texas or something like that, and you're chasing them around. But from my understanding, with what the proposed ordinance is, you could go to parking tickets, then it can get escalated to non-traffic citations.
Well, no, what I was asking is,
Oh.
are these township residents who drive trucks for a living?
That's my understanding. I
Okay.
assume.
And then what do they do with their trucks?
Well, I think that when the residents are not currently on the road driving, they have nowhere to store it. So they're finding areas to store them throughout the township. And they found that when they're storing in the commercial district along these streets, the township didn't have the ability to enforce the vehicles. There's essentially a loophole within the ordinance.
Right. But I mean, literally, where will these people go? I mean, first of all, I want to know the unintended, and I understand, and I'm for this. I'm just thinking through the unintended consequences. If these are residents, and I don't know a lot about the trucking business, so is there a legal place somewhere where they can go? Is there a protocol that they're supposed to do? Go park at a site and make sure someone come and get you and bring the
Truck stop.
In Lower Paxton Township, I'm not aware of any truck stops, but if when going through the ordinance, in any business district, you can have parking for tractor trailers that is not a principal use, meaning that, say you have a warehouse or you're in an industrial district and they have tractor trailers or the cabs themselves parked there, that's something that's permitted. If there's a parking lot that's specifically for tractor trailers, I think that's a special exception. But if they're to move, I know we've dealt with residents that have their cabs parked at their residential homes, which is permitted if they meet the requirements set forth in our ordinance. When they can't meet those requirements, a lot of times they pay rent to go to a commercial district, like a storage facility, and park their truck on site.
Okay, and because like I said, I'm inclined to support this because the residents are asking for help. I feel a little bad, as far as what is this going to mean for our other residents who do this for a living, and
Well, Nick, they could go out to the truck stop and park, right? You don't have to have a permit to park out there.
I'm not familiar with what where they have to go or what they have to do. I'm thinking that if you're in that industry, they would know what they have to do.
Right.
It looks like they took advantage of us. I don't want to say it's in a negative way, but a situation presented themselves and they utilized it, which became problematic for the residents in that area.
Has the owner of the property behind where the fruit stand was, because I don't know who owns, I mean, would they own that fruit standy area too? Have they been notified that this is occurring?
They have been notified, and the posts that were there associated with the fruit stand, which also shows to so happen to be within the PennDOT right-of-way, they were posted as prohibited, no parking. So when you do something like that, the owner's responsibility is then put on the owner of the property, which made it more difficult for the police department to do anything. But to compel the owner to follow through and have these vehicles addressed, that's been difficult.
Okay, so the owner knows that this is occurring.
Correct. But with the vehicles parked along the right-of-way, essentially that, from what I can tell, is not his property. That's along,
The state road.
yes, correct.
And these major trucking firms in the United States certainly have advised their drivers where they can park, where they can. I'm sure they know the geography to say, in these areas, this is the area that we've designated. So it's partly, well, not partly, it is their responsibility as the owners to tell their drivers, their employees, where and where not to, because obviously if there's a violation, the company may be held responsible to pay the fines.
Well, the bottom line is they're parking in a place where they shouldn't be.
Exactly.
And it is incumbent upon whoever owns or drives the truck to rent or lease space to park their truck in the appropriately designated area. So,
Exactly.
I mean, if I owned a truck, I can't just go park it in my neighbor's, in front of my neighbor's house or whatever, or even along this road after we have this ordinance. Been a long day. Any other questions for Nick? Okay, well,
Thank you.
that was the first presentation, so thank you. We now need to move to first presentation of Resolution 2020-10, this authorizing the disposition of equipment purchased through the Fire Equipment Capital Fund.
Yes, sir. Members of the board, this resolution seems, it is fairly straightforward, and it's something that the board has done in the past, albeit a bit more targeted. This resolution essentially allows the volunteer fire companies to take ownership of vehicles that will be retired through the purchase of a new piece of apparatus within the capital improvement plan. So when there is a new piece of apparatus purchased, as we will have 3 in the very near future, the old piece, the piece that will be retired, will simply, through this resolution, be deeded to the fire company, and then from that point, they can go ahead and make the appropriate accommodations to sell it, rather than having the township be involved in selling the piece of apparatus. The fire company will do it in consultation, of course, with the public safety director. But this merely makes the process smoother, quicker, more expeditious, and
But the money comes back into the.
into the fund. Correct.
Into the
correct.
capital fund.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Because we need that money to then
Yes.
replenish the fund for the next round of purchases.
Correct.
Okay.
This merely expedites the process.
Correct. Just more of a paperwork thing than anything really.
Good. Let's get to the second reading.
Amen. Okay. So any other questions? I think we pretty much know what you're doing there. We do need to take action this evening on Ordinance 2020-02, this creating Chapter 131 of the Codified Ordinances entitled Noise and Regulating Noise. And Mr. Stein, this one's in your ballpark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of this ordinance is to move out of the zoning ordinance the noise provisions, because when they're in the zoning ordinance, they're very hard to enforce, because police officers are not allowed to enforce zoning ordinances. So therefore, it would fall on the zoning officer, and most of these complaints about noise come either at night or on a weekend when the zoning officer is obviously not in the office. So that's the reason for moving it into a standalone ordinance, which would be Chapter 131 of the codified ordinances. And that being the case, if you wish, Mr. Chairman, I will open up a public hearing.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is time and date set for the public hearing on Ordinance 20-02, which would create Chapter 131 of the codified ordinances titled Noise and Regulating Noise. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to be heard on Ordinance 20-02? Mr. Klein, you don't have any comments on this one? Okay.
You're representing the public this evening.
Seeing no response, Mr. Chairman, it would be in order at this time to close the public hearing on Ordinance 20-02, and the board may take action if it so desires.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. We have Ordinance 2020-02 before us. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve Ordinance 2020-02, creating Chapter 131 of the codified ordinances titled Noise and Regulating Noise.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, aye? Aye. Okay. That takes us to the one remaining item, subdivision and land development plans, improvement guarantees, of which there are one. Is one. Got to get my grammar correct. Or
Thank you.
Seems pretty straightforward.
Right. This is an extension and increase. Again, I saw nothing. Is there anything different, Mr. Gottschall?
No,
I didn't
sir.
see anything. Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the improvement guarantee as presented and recommended by staff.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Takes us to announcements. Does any member of the board or the manager have any additional announcements? Yes.
yeah,
we do
Mr.
have
Chairman, if I may.
One item that we want to present, yes.
Yeah, just to give the board and the public a brief update. Yesterday morning, I attended the session presented by Congressman Scott Perry and Penn State Health at the Penn State Health campus, briefing public officials on the rapidly developing coronavirus situation, outbreak, if you will. The audience was vast. There were probably over 100 attendees to this event, all public officials, members from school boards, superintendents, and as well as, municipal managers and all the rest. The congressmen and members from Penn State Health, as well as the State Department of Health, gave great updates on the outbreak as it stood yesterday morning, which, as they presented, this thing is, changing by the hour, really, and so as a result of that, they wanted to have everyone on the same page and make sure that all public entities are aware of what's going on and how to proceed. Most of the questions that came out of that session were as a result of school districts, a lot of superintendents, needing to know what to do with their students, what to do with events and things like that. I don't want to say it to be alarming, but just to put it in perspective of how quickly this thing is changing, the entities that were presenting were not quite concrete in their guidance as it related to particular questions. So when a superintendent came up and asked, what to do with this event that they have coming up, the response was, at this point, it should be a local decision. Here's the information, but you do with it what you will and make decisions locally as you feel best fits your entity. So with that being said, I took that information, applied it locally here, put out a memo to all staff indicating what the township's plan is with this ongoing situation. Essentially, in all areas of the township that are public facing, we're talking reception, the Friendship Center, our permitting counters and areas. We're going to make sure that we have the appropriate disinfecting materials, whether that be wipes or some type of spray or something like that. If we notice individuals of the public coming in that are sneezing or coughing or expelling some type of bodily fluid, they should make the appropriate action and wipe the area down and do what we can to keep the spread of germs at a minimum. Additionally, department heads have been instructed that if they see staff that are exhibiting symptoms commonly associated with the disease, that they should be sent home immediately to stop the spread of the disease here within the walls of the township center. And then they, should be instructed to get the appropriate testing personally before returning to work. And also, right now, since the situation is so fluid, I have instructed staff that at this point, any events that have been scheduled with the township, large-scale events, things that the township has approved. I'm thinking of one in particular, such as the Easter egg event that we have coming up, the extravaganza. Yes, at this point, those events should continue to take place, but make it very aware that we are continuously monitoring this event, and if the situation does present itself that we have to cancel these things to keep the spread of this disease at bay, we'll do that. But so we're monitoring this thing, and we are keeping on top of everything that we have to at this point. So that's what we're doing from the township perspective.
Bless you.
And if you have any questions or anything to that end, I'll be happy to answer them.
Good job. Keep monitoring.
And then at the next meeting, we might want to talk a bit about the planning that the public safety director, the police department, the fire departments, there are existing plans for dealing with situations like this, but just to bring us up to date on how those policies have now been dusted off and made sure that everybody is familiar with them, not only our employees, but also our volunteer services as well, because they are also at risk. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Is there a motion then? We will next meet, by the way, on Tuesday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, right here in this meeting room at 7 p.m. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.